I never thought the sound of my own heartbreak could echo so loudly in a crowded room. Hey everyone, I'm Nathan Walker. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button now because today I'm sharing the most devastating story of my life. A story that changed everything in the span of 10 minutes. 3 years ago, on what should have been the happiest day of my life, I discovered something that shattered my world completely. But what I did next left 180 wedding guests speechless and destroyed 2 people's reputations forever. Stay with me until the end and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Trust me, the revenge I served that day was more satisfying than the wedding cake we never got to cut. Boston, Massachusetts. A city of history, ambition, and resilience, where old money meets new innovation, and where I learned that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones planning your destruction. This is where my story begins. Let me take you back to April 2021. I was Nathan Walker, 34 years old, owner of a successful chain of fitness centers called Pinnacle Fitness, across the Boston metro area. I had built my business from nothing. Started with one small gym in a strip mall in Dorchester and grew it into a multi-million-dollar operation with 12 locations stretching from Newton to Cambridge. My journey to success hadn't been easy. Growing up in a working-class Irish-American family in Southie, I watched my father Sean work 2 jobs just to keep our family afloat. My mother Eileen worked as a hospital receptionist while raising 3 kids. They sacrificed everything to give us opportunities they never had, and I was determined not to waste their efforts. In high school, I was that kid who was decent at everything but exceptional at nothing. Average grades, decent at hockey, okay at baseball. It wasn't until I started lifting weights in my junior year that I found my calling. The gym became my sanctuary, the place where hard work always paid off, where you got exactly what you put in. No politics, no favoritism, just pure effort equals results. I earned a football scholarship to Boston College, not because I was the most talented player, but because I was the hardest worker on the team. Coach Sullivan used to say I was too stubborn to fail, and he was right. While other players partied, I studied. While they slept in, I was at the gym. By senior year, I was team captain and had earned a business degree with a focus on entrepreneurship. That's where I met Lucas Reynolds, who would become both my closest friend and eventually my greatest betrayer. Lucas was everything I wasn't: naturally gifted, effortlessly charming, from a wealthy family in Beacon Hill. His father owned an investment firm, and Lucas was expected to follow in his footsteps. But despite our different backgrounds, we clicked immediately. He was the star quarterback to my reliable offensive lineman. He was the smooth talker who got us into the best parties. I was the designated driver who made sure we got home safely. Our friendship was forged during my darkest hour. During spring practice of our junior year, I received a call that changed everything. My younger sister Maggie, just 16 years old and full of life, had been killed in a car accident caused by a drunk driver. I was ready to quit school, quit football, quit everything. The pain was so overwhelming I couldn't see past it. Lucas literally saved my life during those weeks. He drove me to the funeral, sat with me through the viewing, helped me write the eulogy when I couldn't find words. He convinced me to finish school, reminding me that Maggie would want me to succeed. When I considered dropping out to help support my family, Lucas quietly arranged for me to receive an anonymous scholarship that covered my remaining expenses. Years later, I learned it had come from his trust fund. That's why his betrayal cut so deep. This wasn't just my friend, this was my brother. After graduation, Lucas joined his father's investment firm while I worked as a personal trainer at a big chain gym, saving every penny I could. I lived in a studio apartment with a mattress on the floor and survived on protein shakes and ramen noodles. Every dollar I didn't spend on survival went into my dream, opening my own gym. Lucas watched my struggle with a mixture of admiration and concern. He offered to lend me money dozens of times, but I was too proud to accept handouts. When I finally saved enough for a down payment on a tiny space in a dying strip mall, Lucas insisted on co-signing the loan. Partners watch out for partners, he said, even when one partner is too stubborn to ask for help. Pinnacle Fitness opened in 2015 with mismatched equipment I'd bought used, walls I'd painted myself, and a determination to succeed that bordered on obsession. I worked 18-hour days, cleaning the bathrooms in the morning and training clients until midnight. Lucas would stop by after work to help with maintenance, refusing payment because friends don't charge friends for favors. The gym slowly grew. Word spread about the trainer who cared more about his clients' success than his profit margins. Members brought their friends. Local athletes started training there. Within 2 years, I had paid off my initial loan and was looking for a second location. By 2018, Pinnacle Fitness had 4 locations. I had a staff of 30 trainers and nutritionists. I was featured in Boston Business Journal as one of the city's rising entrepreneurs under 40. Most importantly, I was able to buy my parents a house in a safe neighborhood and pay off all their debts. The American dream was working exactly as advertised. That's when I met Olivia Harper. It was October 2018, and I was attending a charity fundraiser for Boston Children's Hospital. Lucas had convinced me to come, saying I needed to network with potential high-end clients. I was uncomfortable in my rented tuxedo, standing awkwardly by the bar, when I saw her across the room. Olivia was working the event as a volunteer coordinator. She wore a simple black dress that somehow made her more stunning than women in $1,000 gowns. Her chestnut hair caught the light like fire, and when she smiled at the children in the hospital promotional video, her entire face transformed with genuine warmth. But what really caught my attention was how she handled a crisis. A catering server had accidentally dropped a tray of appetizers near some major donors. While others stood around pointing and whispering, Olivia immediately knelt down to help clean up, making jokes to defuse the server's embarrassment and ensuring the donors felt comfortable. In that moment, I knew she was special. Lucas noticed me staring. "Go talk to her," he urged. "I don't know what to say to someone like that," I admitted. "Look at her. She's classy, educated, sophisticated. What would she want with a gym owner from Southie?" "She'd want what everyone wants," Lucas said with that confident grin of his. "Someone genuine who treats her well. Stop overthinking and just be yourself." It took me 2 hours to work up the courage to approach her. When I finally did, I was so nervous I nearly knocked over her drink. "I'm sorry," I stammered. "I was wondering if... I was hoping. Would you like to dance?" She looked at me with those incredible hazel eyes and smiled. "I thought you'd never ask. I've been watching you pace around that bar for an hour." Our first dance was magical, but our first conversation was what sealed my fate. Olivia was a pediatric ICU nurse at Boston Children's Hospital. She'd chosen nursing because she wanted to make a real difference in people's lives. She talked about her patients with such compassion and dedication that I found myself falling in love before the song ended. "What about you?" she asked. "What's your story?" I told her about growing up in Southie, about Maggie's death, about building my business from nothing. I expected her to be polite but distant. After all, I was just a gym owner talking to a woman who clearly came from a different world. Instead, her eyes filled with tears when I talked about my sister, and she squeezed my hand when I described my parents' sacrifices. "You're not just anything," she said firmly. "You're someone who turned tragedy into purpose. That's rare." We talked until the event ended, then moved to a nearby coffee shop and talked until dawn. I learned that Olivia had grown up in Newton, the daughter of a successful surgeon and a university professor. She'd gone to private schools and could have chosen any career, but she felt called to help others. Despite her privileged background, she was grounded, kind, and had a laugh that could light up the darkest room. By our 3rd date, I was completely smitten. By our 6th date, I knew I was going to marry her. By our 10th date, Lucas was joking that he'd never seen me so happy. "She's perfect for you, brother," he said after meeting Olivia at a Red Sox game. "She balances you out. Makes you laugh more, stress less. Hold on to that one." Olivia fit seamlessly into our friend group. She loved hiking in the Blue Hills, didn't mind that our idea of fine dining was sometimes a pizza place in the North End, and genuinely enjoyed Lucas's endless stories about finance deals and dating disasters. The 3 of us became inseparable, grabbing dinner after Olivia's shifts, taking weekend trips to Cape Cod, spending holidays together when Olivia's parents traveled to their house in Martha's Vineyard. Looking back, I think that was when it started, though I was too blind to see it. Olivia and Lucas had an easy friendship that I envied sometimes. She could tease him about his dating life without it being awkward. He could give her advice about dealing with difficult doctors without seeming inappropriate. When I was stressed about business decisions, they would gang up on me, forcing me to relax and have fun. They had inside jokes, shared interests in sailing and photography, and a natural chemistry that I attributed to them both being more social than I was. What I thought was friendship was actually 2 people falling in love while trying desperately to deny it. The proposal happened in December 2019, 18 months after we started dating. I arranged for a private dinner on the harbor, complete with a photographer hiding nearby and Olivia's favorite flowers scattered everywhere. When I got down on one knee, she started crying before I could even get the words out. Yes, she sobbed. Yes, yes, of course, yes. The ring was a 1-carat solitaire that had cost me more than my first car, but seeing it on her finger made every sacrifice worth it. We spent the rest of the night planning our future. Where we'd live, how many kids we wanted, what we'd name our first dog. Lucas was the first person we called with the news. About damn time, he laughed. I was starting to think you'd never ask. Olivia, welcome to the family officially. Nate, you're the luckiest man alive. At the time, I thought his enthusiasm was pure joy for our happiness. Now I wonder if it was guilt. We set the wedding date for April 17, 2021, giving us 15 months to plan. Olivia wanted a spring wedding with natural light and harbor views. I wanted whatever made her happy. The planning process was incredibly fun. We spent weekends touring venues, tasting cakes, and dreaming about our perfect day. Olivia chose the Liberty Hotel for the reception because of its unique architecture and beautiful views of the Charles River. She found the perfect photographer, a woman named Julia Santos who specialized in capturing authentic moments. She picked a string quartet that had played for the governor's inauguration. Every detail was carefully chosen to create the perfect celebration of our love. The guest list grew to 180 people. Family from across the country, friends from college, clients who had become close to us, Olivia's colleagues from the hospital. We decided on a lunch reception because Olivia loved the idea of celebrating in natural daylight rather than artificial evening lighting. Lucas was my automatic choice for best man. There was literally no other option. He'd been my closest friend for over a decade, he'd helped build my business, and he loved Olivia almost as much as I did. Who else would I trust with the most important role in my wedding? The bridal party included Olivia's sister Emma as maid of honor, plus 3 of her closest friends from nursing school. Lucas's groomsman duties would include managing the other groomsmen, holding the rings, and giving a toast at the reception. He took these responsibilities seriously, often joking that he needed to make sure everything was perfect for his best friend's big day. As the wedding approached, Olivia threw herself into the final details with an intensity that surprised me. She'd always been organized and thorough, but she became almost obsessive about getting everything exactly right. She made lists of lists, triple-checked every vendor, and spent hours on Pinterest perfecting the aesthetic. I just wanted to be perfect, she'd say when I suggested she might be overdoing it. We only get one wedding day. What I didn't realize was that she was planning the wedding while simultaneously planning how to end our relationship afterwards. The first sign something was wrong came about 6 months before the wedding. Olivia started working extra shifts at the hospital, claiming they were short-staffed in the ICU. When I offered to bring her dinner during her breaks, she'd make excuses about being too busy. When I suggested we take a weekend trip to break up the wedding planning stress, she said she couldn't take time off. I attributed this to pre-wedding anxiety and work pressure. Pediatric ICU nursing is emotionally demanding under the best circumstances, and I knew Olivia carried the weight of her patients suffering more heavily than she let on. If she needed extra space to process everything, I was happy to give it to her. The second sign was her phone habits. Olivia had never been secretive about her phone. She'd answer calls in front of me, share funny texts from friends, even let me use her phone when mine was dead. But suddenly she was taking calls in other rooms, keeping her phone face down during dinner, and getting texts at odd hours that she'd quickly dismiss as work stuff. One evening in December, I was loading the dishwasher when her phone rang on the kitchen counter. The caller ID said Lucas, which wasn't unusual. He often called to coordinate plans or share some ridiculous story from his workday. Olivia was in the shower, so I answered. Hey man, Olivia's in the shower. You want me to have her call you back? There was a long pause before Lucas's voice, sounding strange and tense. Oh hey Nate. I was just calling to ask about the bachelor party plans. You know, trying to coordinate schedules. Something felt off about his explanation, but I couldn't put my finger on what. We've got plenty of time to plan that stuff. Everything okay? You sound weird. Yeah, everything's fine. Just tired from work. Don't worry about having Olivia call back, it wasn't important. He hung up quickly, leaving me staring at the phone with an uneasy feeling I couldn't shake. The third sign was Lucas's behavior. He'd always been a frequent presence in our lives, but starting around January he seemed to be everywhere. He'd show up unannounced with coffee for Olivia when she got off late shifts. He'd offer to run wedding errands with her when I was busy at the gym. He'd text her funny memes and articles throughout the day, claiming he was keeping her entertained during stressful times. Initially I was grateful. Wedding planning was overwhelming, and I was dealing with the stress of opening 2 new gym locations simultaneously. Lucas's help meant Olivia wasn't handling everything alone, and his presence seemed to make her happy during a stressful time. But then I started noticing the way they interacted. There were inside jokes I didn't understand. Shared glances that lasted a beat too long. A comfort level between them that seemed to have deepened in ways I couldn't explain. One evening in February, the 3 of us were having dinner at our favorite restaurant in Back Bay. Olivia and Lucas were discussing a sailing trip they both wanted to take, making plans for a weekend when I was traveling for business. "You should come with us," Olivia said to me, but something in her tone suggested she was hoping I'd decline. "I wish I could," I replied, "but that's the weekend of the New York trade show. You two have fun though. Take lots of pictures." They exchanged a look that made my stomach clench. It was quick, but I saw it, a mixture of excitement and guilt that I couldn't interpret at the time. The 4th sign came 3 weeks before the wedding. Olivia started having trouble sleeping, tossing and turning beside me for hours. When I asked if she was okay, she'd blame it on work stress or wedding anxiety. But sometimes late at night, I'd catch her staring at the ceiling with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anxiety, but something deeper. Conflict. One night, unable to sleep herself, she went out to the living room. I found her there at 2 a.m., sitting on the couch in the dark, staring out the window at the city lights. "Babe, what's wrong?" I asked, sitting beside her and pulling her close. "I'm just scared," she whispered against my chest. "Of what? The wedding? Marriage?" She was quiet for so long I thought she'd fallen asleep. Finally she said, "What if we're making a mistake? What if we're not as compatible as we think?" My heart clenched. Where is this coming from? We're perfect together. Are we? Sometimes I feel like I'm not the person you think I am. I held her tighter. "Olivia, you're everything I've ever wanted. You're kind, brilliant, compassionate, beautiful. You make me a better man just by being in my life." She started crying then, soft sobs that shook her whole body. "I love you so much," she said, and it sounded almost like an apology. "I love you too. Whatever you're worried about, we'll figure it out together. That's what marriage is, choosing each other every day no matter what." Looking back, I think that was the moment she realized she'd already chosen someone else. The 5th and most telling sign came 2 weeks before the wedding. Olivia announced that she needed some space to clear her head before the big day. She moved back to her parents' house temporarily, claiming she wanted to experience the traditional pre-wedding separation period. "It's just for 2 weeks, she assured me. "I want our wedding night to feel special, like a real new beginning." I hated the idea but respected her wishes. We'd see each other for final wedding planning meetings and scheduled date nights, but otherwise she wanted to focus on mentally preparing for marriage. What she was actually doing was spending time with Lucas, though I wouldn't learn this until much later. During this separation period, Lucas became oddly distant as well. Our regular guys' nights stopped. He was frequently unavailable when I called. When we did hang out, he seemed distracted and kept checking his phone. I assumed he was dealing with work stress. His investment firm had landed several major clients and he'd been putting in long hours. The truth was that Lucas and Olivia were using this time to be together without worrying about my unexpected appearances. They were taking long walks along the Charles River, having intimate dinners at restaurants where we wouldn't be recognized, and falling deeper in love while planning how to handle the aftermath of my inevitable discovery. 1 week before the wedding, during our final venue walkthrough, Olivia seemed almost manic. She was checking and rechecking every detail, asking the same questions multiple times, and making last-minute changes that stressed out all the vendors. "Olivia, everything looks perfect," I kept saying. "You need to relax and trust that it's all going to work out beautifully." "You don't understand," she replied sharply, then immediately softened her tone. "I'm sorry. I just want everything to be exactly right. This is the most important day of our lives." But when she said, "our lives," she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at Lucas, who was helping coordinate with the catering staff. The night before the wedding, we had our rehearsal dinner at the Fairmont Copley Plaza. The meal was perfect, the toasts were heartfelt, and everyone seemed excited for the next day's celebration. Olivia appeared to have finally relaxed, laughing and chatting with family members she hadn't seen in months. Lucas gave a rehearsal toast that brought tears to many eyes, including mine. "Nathan," he said, raising his champagne glass, "I've watched you build something incredible. Not just your business but the man you've become. You've shown me what it means to work hard, stay loyal, and never give up on your dreams. Tomorrow, you're marrying the woman who completes you, and I couldn't be happier for both of you." He turned to Olivia. "Olivia, you've brought out the best in my best friend. You've made him happier than I've ever seen him. I know you two are going to have an incredible life together." The sincerity in his voice was so convincing that I never suspected he was saying goodbye to the life he'd planned to steal from me. After dinner, Olivia kissed me goodnight outside the hotel. "Tomorrow is going to be perfect," she whispered against my lips. "I can't wait to marry you," I replied, holding her close. "I love you, Nathan. No matter what happens, I want you to know that I really do love you." At the time, I thought it was romantic. Later, I realized it was her attempt to ease her own guilt. The morning of April 17, 2021, dawned crisp and clear. The kind of perfect Boston spring day that makes you believe in magic. I woke up at 6 a.m., too excited and nervous to sleep. Today was the day I'd been dreaming about for over 2 years. Lucas arrived at my house at 8 a.m. with coffee from our favorite place and a bottle of Macallan 18-year-old scotch. "Liquid courage," he said with a grin, but I noticed his hands were shaking slightly as he poured. "You more nervous than I am?" I joked. "Just want everything to go perfectly for you, brother. This is your day." We spent the morning getting ready, joking around, and sharing memories from our college days. Lucas seemed almost nostalgic, bringing up stories I hadn't heard in years and getting emotional about moments from our friendship. "You know you're like a brother to me, right?" he said suddenly while adjusting his tie in my bedroom mirror. "Of course. Your family, Lucas. Always will be." He turned away quickly, but not before I saw something that looked like pain flash across his face. The ceremony at Old North Church was everything Olivia had dreamed of. The sanctuary was decorated with white roses and greenery, creating an elegant but natural atmosphere. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns on the walls. When I took my position at the altar with Lucas beside me, I felt a sense of completion I'd never experienced before. This was it, the moment my real life began. The processional music started, and the bridesmaids walked down the aisle in their soft blue dresses. Olivia's sister Emma winked at me as she passed, a gesture that made me smile and relax slightly. Then the wedding march began, and Olivia appeared at the back of the church on her father's arm. I've heard people say that time stops when you see your bride walking down the aisle, but that's not what happened to me. Instead, time became crystal clear and hyper-aware. I noticed everything: the way her dress moved with each step, the tears in her mother's eyes, the way the light caught the beading on her gown, the slight tremor in her hands as she held her bouquet. Most of all, I noticed that she looked radiant but conflicted. Even in that moment of perfect joy, there was something in her eyes that I couldn't interpret. I attributed it to normal wedding day emotions, but now I realized she was struggling with the weight of what she was about to do. When she reached the altar, her father lifted her veil and kissed her cheek before placing her hand in mine. "Take care of my little girl," he whispered to me. "Always," I promised, meaning every word. Father Patrick, who had known my family since I was a child, performed the ceremony with warmth and dignity. His words about love, commitment, and faithfulness resonated through the sanctuary. When it came time for vows, Olivia spoke first, her voice clear and strong despite the tears in her eyes. "Nathan, you are my best friend, my greatest love, and my perfect partner. You've shown me what it means to work hard for your dreams and never give up on the people you love. Today I promise to support your dreams, share your burdens, and celebrate your victories. I promise to be faithful in good times and bad, in sickness and health, for all the days of my life. I can't imagine my future without you in it." The words were beautiful and sounded completely sincere. Even knowing what I know now, I believe she meant them in that moment. The tragedy wasn't that she was lying. It was that she was making promises she genuinely wanted to keep but knew she couldn't. My vows were simpler but came straight from my heart. "Olivia, you came into my life when I thought I had everything figured out, and you showed me I didn't know anything about happiness. You've made me braver, kinder, and more hopeful about the future. I promise to protect you, provide for you, and love you unconditionally. I promise to be the husband you deserve and the father our children will need. I promise that no matter what challenges we face, we'll face them together. You are my heart, my home, and my forever. When Father Patrick asked for the rings, Lucas stepped forward with steady hands and a clear voice. The rings, he said simply, but I caught him wiping his eyes as he handed them over. Do you, Nathan, take Olivia to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do, I said without hesitation. Do you, Olivia, take Nathan to be your lawfully wedded husband? There was the briefest pause, maybe a second, maybe less, before Olivia said, I do. By the power vested in me by the state of Massachusetts, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. The kiss was perfect, soft, sweet, and full of promise. The congregation erupted in applause and cheers. As we broke apart, Olivia looked into my eyes and smiled, but there were tears streaming down her face. I love you, Mrs. Walker, I whispered. I love you too, she whispered back, and in that moment I believed everything was going to be perfect. The recessional was joyful chaos. We walked back down the aisle hand in hand while our families and friends threw rice and flower petals. Outside the church, we were greeted by a beautiful April afternoon and a photographer who captured every moment of our joy. The photo session took about an hour. We did family portraits, wedding party shots, and romantic couples photos around the historic district. Olivia looked absolutely radiant, and I couldn't stop staring at my ring, this tangible proof that she was really mine forever. All right, everyone, announced Julia, our photographer, let's head to the reception venue for some more shots before the guests arrive. Lucas offered to drive Olivia to the Liberty Hotel while I rode with my parents, giving us a few minutes to decompress before the reception began. See you at the hotel, Mrs. Walker, I said, kissing Olivia once more. See you there, Mr. Walker, she replied with that beautiful smile that had first captivated me 3 years earlier. I watched Lucas's black Range Rover pull away from the church, carrying my new wife toward what should have been the celebration of our new life together. Instead, they were driving toward the moment that would destroy everything. The Liberty Hotel's ballroom was a masterpiece of elegant design that took my breath away every time I saw it. Olivia had chosen it specifically for its unique architecture and historic charm, and on this perfect April afternoon, the natural light streaming in created an almost ethereal atmosphere. The room was decorated exactly as Olivia had envisioned. Round tables for 8 covered in crisp white linens, centerpieces featuring white roses, blue hydrangeas, and cascading greenery. Navy blue napkins and gold charger plates added touches of warmth and elegance. String lights created a romantic canopy effect above the dance floor, and the head table was positioned perfectly to overlook both the guests and the city views beyond. Everything was exactly as we'd planned during months of meetings with the wedding coordinator, Rachel Chen. The floral arrangements were fresh and fragrant, the place cards were positioned perfectly, and the champagne fountain was ready for toasting. Even the weather had cooperated, sunny skies and 65 degrees, perfect for the outdoor cocktail hour on the hotel's terrace. My parents arrived shortly after I did, both beaming with pride and joy. My mother Eileen looked elegant in her navy blue mother of the groom dress, and my father Sean wore his best suit with a boutonniere that matched my own. Sweetheart, my mother said, tears in her eyes as she hugged me, your sister would be so proud today. You look so handsome, so happy. Thanks, Mom. I just wish Maggie could be here to see this. She's here, my father said firmly, placing his weathered hand on my shoulder. She's watching over you today, making sure everything is perfect. Olivia's parents, Dr. Richard and Professor Catherine Harper, arrived in their typical style, Catherine in an expensive designer dress that probably cost more than my first car, Richard looking distinguished in a custom-tailored tuxedo. They were good people despite their wealth and status, and they'd always treated me like family, but their world was so different from mine that I sometimes felt like I was playing a role when I was around them. Nathan, Catherine said, kissing my cheek, you look absolutely wonderful. Have you seen Olivia? She should be here by now. Lucas drove her from the church, I replied. They should be here any minute. Richard clapped me on the back. Well done, son. You've married well, he said with a warm smile. The first guests began arriving at 12:30 p.m. Friends from college, business associates, Olivia's colleagues from the hospital, extended family members who'd traveled from across the country. Everyone was dressed in their finest clothes and wearing genuine smiles of celebration. My college roommate Ryan brought his wife and twin daughters, who immediately became fascinated by the fancy stemware and elegant decorations. "Look at you all grown up and married," Ryan laughed, giving me a bear hug. "Remember when you swore you'd never settle down?" "That was before I met Olivia," I replied, scanning the room for any sign of my new wife. "She changed everything." Lucas's parents, William and Victoria Reynolds, were among the early arrivals. William was a distinguished man who'd built his investment firm from scratch, and Victoria was the kind of polished Beacon Hill matron who always seemed to know exactly the right thing to say. "Nathan, congratulations," Victoria said, kissing my cheek. "Lucas told us how beautiful the ceremony was. Where is that handsome son of mine?" "He should be here soon," I said. "He drove Olivia from the church so they could finish up some photos." "That's our Lucas," William chuckled. "Always taking care of everyone else. If only they knew how he was taking care of my wife." By 1 p.m., most of the guests had arrived and were enjoying cocktails on the terrace, but Olivia and Lucas were still nowhere to be seen. I tried calling both of their phones, but both went straight to voicemail. Where could they be? I asked Rachel, our wedding coordinator, trying to keep the worry out of my voice. "Oh, you know how these things go," she replied with professional calm. "The bride probably wanted to make some last-minute adjustments to her dress or touch up her makeup. They'll be here soon and everything will be perfect." But as the minutes ticked by, I found it increasingly difficult to maintain my composure. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but a familiar knot of anxiety was growing in my stomach. The same feeling I'd been having for months whenever something didn't quite make sense about Olivia and Lucas's behavior. At 1:15 p.m., I decided to call the church to see if they were still there. Father Patrick answered the phone himself. "Nathan, congratulations again on a beautiful ceremony. How can I help you?" "Father, did Olivia and Lucas leave the church after the photos? They haven't arrived at the reception yet." "Oh yes, they left about 20 minutes after you did. Lucas mentioned something about stopping for coffee on the way to the hotel. I'm sure they'll be there soon." The coffee excuse might have made sense, except Lucas had brought coffee for everyone that morning, and there were at least 5 cafes between the church and the hotel. A quick stop shouldn't take 45 minutes. At 1:30 p.m., lunch was supposed to be served, but the bride and best man were still missing. I was starting to get genuinely worried. Had there been an accident? A medical emergency? Why weren't they answering their phones? "Nathan, sweetheart," my mother approached me with concern etched on her face. "People are asking where Olivia is. What should I tell them?" "Tell them she's running a little late with some last-minute preparations," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "She'll be here soon." But even as I said the words, that sick feeling in my stomach was growing stronger. Finally, at 1:45 p.m., Lucas's black Range Rover pulled into the hotel's circular driveway. I felt a rush of relief wash over me. Whatever had delayed them, they were finally here and we could begin the celebration. I positioned myself near the ballroom entrance, ready to greet my beautiful wife and get the reception officially started. The guests had been incredibly patient, but I could sense that people were getting hungry and wondering what was happening. Olivia entered the ballroom first, and she looked absolutely stunning in her reception dress. A shorter, more playful version of her ceremony gown that allowed for easier movement and dancing. Her hair and makeup were perfect, though I noticed she seemed a bit flustered and kept glancing back toward Lucas. "There's my beautiful wife," I said, opening my arms for a hug. She came to me, but her embrace felt different somehow, tense, almost guilty. "Sorry we're late," she whispered against my ear. I had some issues with my dress and needed Lucas to help me figure it out. Lucas appeared beside us, looking slightly disheveled despite his obvious attempts to straighten his appearance. His tie was askew, his hair looked like he'd been running his hands through it, and there was something in his expression I couldn't quite read, excitement mixed with anxiety, like someone who'd just done something thrilling but wrong. "Sorry, brother," Lucas said, clapping me on the shoulder a bit too forcefully. "You know how women are about looking perfect." I had to wait while she redid her lipstick 3 times. Olivia shot him a look that seemed almost like a warning, which I found strange. Why would she care if Lucas joked about her makeup routine? "No problem," I said, though I was still puzzled by their delay and their odd energy. "Let's get this party started. Everyone's been waiting to celebrate with us." The reception began beautifully. We made our grand entrance as husband and wife to thunderous applause and cheers from our 180 guests. The string quartet played our chosen song, At Last by Etta James, while we took our seats at the head table. Rachel, our wedding coordinator, was efficiency personified. She quickly organized the receiving line, coordinated with the catering staff to begin service, and made sure the photographer was capturing all the important moments. The first course was a mixed green salad with candied walnuts, dried cranberries, and champagne vinaigrette. The conversation at our table was lively and joyful. Olivia's sister Emma was telling funny stories about their childhood. Lucas was charming everyone with his investment firm anecdotes, and I felt like I could finally relax and enjoy the celebration. But I kept noticing small things that bothered me. Olivia and Lucas weren't making eye contact with each other, which was odd since they usually had such easy, natural interactions. When Olivia laughed at Lucas's jokes, it seemed forced rather than genuine. When Lucas complimented Olivia's appearance, she blushed in a way that seemed more like embarrassment than pleasure. Most strangely, they both seemed hyper-aware of where I was and what I was doing at all times. If I got up to greet guests at other tables, both of them would track my movement around the room. If I pulled out my phone, they would both glance over to see what I was doing. It felt like they were monitoring me, though I couldn't imagine why. During the main course, herb-crusted cod with roasted vegetables and wild rice pilaf, I stood to give my thank you speech to the assembled guests. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, tapping my champagne glass to get everyone's attention. Olivia and I want to thank all of you for being here today to celebrate the beginning of our life together. The room quieted, and all eyes turned toward the head table. I looked out at the faces of people who had traveled from across the country to be with us. Family members, childhood friends, college roommates, business associates, Olivia's colleagues from the hospital. These were the people who mattered most in our lives, and seeing them all gathered together filled my heart with gratitude. When I think about how Olivia and I met, I continued, I'm reminded that the best things in life often come when you least expect them. I went to a charity fundraiser thinking I might make some business connections, and instead I met the woman who would change my life completely. I looked down at Olivia, who was smiling up at me, but there was something in her eyes that I couldn't interpret. It wasn't the pure joy I expected to see on our wedding day. There was conflict there, almost like she was fighting some internal battle. Olivia, you've made me a better man in every way. You've taught me that success isn't just about building a business or achieving goals. It's about building a life with someone who shares your values and supports your dreams. I promise to love you, protect you, and cherish you for all the days of my life. The applause was warm and enthusiastic. Several guests wiped away tears, and I could see genuine affection for both of us in the faces throughout the room. Lucas stood to give his best man speech next, and I sat down to enjoy hearing my best friend talk about our friendship and his hopes for my marriage. I've known Nathan for over 15 years, Lucas began, his voice strong and confident, and in all that time, I've never seen him happier than he's been since Olivia came into his life. He went on to tell stories about our college days, my determination to build my business, and how Olivia had brought out sides of my personality that even he hadn't seen before. The speech was heartfelt, funny, and perfectly delivered. Nathan and Olivia, he concluded, raising his champagne glass, may your love story be everything you've dreamed of and more. May you always find in each other your best friend, your greatest love, and your most trusted partner. Cheers to the happy couple. The toast was met with enthusiastic applause and cheers. Lucas hugged me warmly, and for a moment, everything felt perfect and right with the world. Dessert was served at 3 p.m., individual chocolate lava cakes with raspberry coulis and vanilla bean ice cream, plus the traditional wedding cake cutting ceremony. Olivia and I performed the customary cake cutting with much laughter and playful feeding of cake to each other while the photographer captured every sweet moment. It was during dessert that Olivia excused herself to use the restroom. I'll be right back, she said, kissing my cheek softly. Too much champagne. She gathered up her small purse and the delicate train of her reception dress and headed toward the back of the ballroom where the restrooms were located. I watched her go, admiring how gracefully she moved even in her elaborate gown, feeling overwhelmed with love and gratitude for this incredible woman who was now my wife. About 3 minutes later, Lucas also excused himself from the table. Nature calls, he said with his characteristic grin, loosening his tie slightly as he headed in the same direction Olivia had gone. I thought nothing of it at the time. People were getting up and down throughout the meal to greet other guests, step outside for fresh air, or use the facilities. It seemed completely normal. I continued chatting with the remaining members of our wedding party, enjoying stories from Emma about Olivia's nursing school days and laughing at reminiscences from my college roommate Ryan about our more ridiculous adventures as undergraduates. But as the minutes ticked by, I realized that both Olivia and Lucas had been gone for quite a while. 5 minutes, then 7, then 10. How long does it take to use the restroom and touch up your makeup? At the 15-minute mark, I started to feel that familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach. The same intuitive worry that had been nagging at me for months whenever Olivia and Lucas's behavior didn't quite make sense. I'm going to check on Olivia, I told Emma. Make sure she's not having trouble with her dress or anything. Emma nodded absently, engaged in conversation with one of the other bridesmaids about their own upcoming wedding plans. I made my way toward the back of the ballroom, weaving between tables of guests who were enjoying their dessert and champagne. Several people stopped me to offer congratulations or share quick stories about the ceremony, and I tried to be gracious while fighting the growing urgency to find my wife. The restroom area was located down a short hallway that also provided access to a service corridor used by the hotel staff. As I approached, I could hear voices coming from somewhere beyond the main restroom doors, hushed but intense conversation that seemed to be coming from the service area. The voices were familiar, though I couldn't quite make out the words. My heart started beating faster as I realized one voice belonged to Olivia and the other to Lucas. What were they doing in a service corridor together? And why did they sound so intimate? I moved closer, trying to understand what was happening without making my presence known. The voices became clearer, and what I heard made my blood run cold. We can't keep doing this, Olivia was saying, her voice breathless with emotion. Someone's going to notice we were both gone for so long. I know, Lucas replied, his voice rough and urgent, but I couldn't help myself. Seeing you in that dress, watching you promise to love him forever. I needed to touch you to remind myself that what we have is real. My legs nearly gave out beneath me. What were they talking about? What did they have that was real? Lucas, please. Olivia's voice was pleading, but not the way someone pleads for something to stop. She was pleading for something else entirely, understanding maybe, or reassurance. This is so hard. I hate lying to him, but I can't imagine my life without you. You won't have to, Lucas said firmly. We agreed, remember? After today we'll figure out how to tell him. We'll make this work somehow. The words hit me like physical blows. Tell me what? Make what work? But what if he never forgives us? Olivia asked, and I could hear tears in her voice. What if this destroys everything? Olivia, look at me. Lucas's voice was gentle but passionate. I love you. I've loved you for months, and I know you love me too. What Nathan doesn't know won't hurt him right now, and eventually he'll have to understand that sometimes people can't help who they fall in love with. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My brain was refusing to process what I was hearing. I do love you, Olivia whispered, so quietly I almost didn't catch it. I love you so much it hurts. But I also love Nathan, and this is killing me. I know, baby. I know. But we can get through this. We just have to be patient a little longer. Then I heard sounds that shattered what was left of my heart, the unmistakable sounds of two people kissing passionately, followed by soft moans and whispered endearments. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely stand. My wife who had just promised to love, honor, and cherish me, was in a service corridor with my best friend, professing their love for each other and making plans for a future that apparently didn't include me. I should have walked away. I should have gone back to the reception and pretended I'd never heard anything. I should have given myself time to process this information and figure out how to handle it rationally. Instead, I found myself moving forward, around the corner into the service corridor, compelled by some force I couldn't control. What I saw there will be burned into my memory until the day I die. Olivia was pressed against the wall, her reception dress hiked up slightly, with Lucas's hands tangled in her carefully styled hair. His suit jacket was on the floor, his shirt partially unbuttoned, his tie completely undone. They were kissing with a desperate passion that took my breath away, not the tentative kiss of a new attraction, but the deep, consuming kiss of two people who were completely and utterly in love with each other. Olivia's arms were wrapped around Lucas's neck, and she was making soft sounds of pleasure that I recognized intimately from our own private moments. Lucas was whispering things against her neck that made her arch against him, their bodies pressed together in a way that spoke of familiarity and desire. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a mistake born of wedding day emotions. This was two people who had been lovers, who knew each other's bodies, who were completely consumed by their feelings for each other. I must have made some sound, a gasp, a sob, or maybe just the sound of my world collapsing, because Olivia suddenly opened her eyes and saw me over Lucas's shoulder. Her face went completely white. "Nathan," she breathed, the word coming out like a prayer or a curse. Lucas spun around so quickly he nearly lost his balance, his face cycling through shock, panic, and finally resignation in the space of about 3 seconds. For a moment, the three of us just stared at each other in complete silence. Lucas's shirt was disheveled, his hair mussed from Olivia's fingers. Olivia's lipstick was smeared, her hair falling out of its careful styling, her dress wrinkled from where his hands had been. The evidence of their betrayal was written all over their bodies, but more than that, I could see the truth in their eyes. This wasn't their first time together. This wasn't a wedding day mistake. This was an established relationship, a deep connection, a love affair that had been going on behind my back. "How long?" I asked, surprised by how calm my voice sounded despite the fact that I felt like I was dying inside. They looked at each other, and in that single glance, I saw everything I needed to know about their relationship. The intimacy, the shared secrets, the guilt, the love, it was all there. "Nathan, let us explain," Lucas said, but his voice cracked on the words. "How long?" I repeated, my voice getting stronger and more dangerous. 8 months, Olivia whispered, tears streaming down her face. 8 months. 2/3 of our engagement. While I was planning our wedding, choosing flowers, tasting cakes, writing vows about eternal love, my fiancé and my best friend were conducting a full-blown love affair behind my back. 8 months, I repeated numbly. Our entire engagement was a lie. "It wasn't like that," Olivia said desperately, reaching toward me with shaking hands. "We tried to stop it, Nathan. We really did. We never meant for this to happen. But you just couldn't help yourselves," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "How romantic. How tragically unavoidable." "Nathan, please," Lucas said, stepping forward but keeping his distance. "I know how this looks, but we do love each other. This isn't some casual fling or meaningless hookup. We're really in love." "Oh, well, that makes it so much better," I snapped. "My wife and my best man are in love. I should be thrilled. I should thank you for finding each other." The absurdity of the situation was almost overwhelming. We were having this conversation in a service corridor while 180 people sat in the ballroom eating wedding cake and celebrating my marriage to a woman who was in love with someone else. What exactly was the plan here? I asked, my anger finally starting to build. Were you going to let me consummate my marriage to a woman who's been sleeping with my best friend? Were you going to let me spend months or years as a fool while you two continued your affair behind my back? "We were going to tell you," Olivia said quickly. "After the honeymoon we were going to sit down and explain everything. We were going to ask for your forgiveness and try to figure out a way to make this work for everyone." "Make this work for everyone?" I stared at her in disbelief. "Olivia, there is no scenario where this works for me. There is no world where I'm okay with my wife being in love with my best friend. People can't help who they fall in love with," Lucas said quietly. "I never wanted this to happen. I fought it for months. But sometimes love just happens." "Love just happens?" I repeated incredulously. "Lucas, love is a choice. Every day love is a choice. You chose to betray 15 years of friendship. You chose to pursue my fiancé. You chose to stand beside me as my best man while planning to steal my wife. Don't you dare talk to me about love just happening." "You're right," Lucas said, his voice breaking. "I made choices. Terrible choices. I betrayed you in the worst possible way, and I'll have to live with that for the rest of my life." "Yes, you will," I agreed coldly. Olivia was sobbing now, her carefully applied makeup running down her face, her beautiful dress wrinkled and stained with tears. "Nathan, what are you going to do?" she asked quietly. I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who had promised to love, honor, and cherish me just hours earlier. This woman who had stood in a church and lied to my face, to our family's faces, to God's face. This woman who I had thought was the love of my life but who I now realized I didn't know at all. "I'm going to go back to our wedding reception," I said with deadly calm. "And you two are going to follow me. Because 180 people deserve to know exactly what kind of celebration they're attending." "Nathan, please don't," Olivia begged. "Think about your parents, my parents, all our friends and family. Don't humiliate everyone like this." "Humiliate everyone?" I laughed bitterly. "Olivia, you and Lucas humiliated me. You made me the fool standing at the altar making promises to a woman who was in love with someone else. You made me the idiot giving a speech about how much I trust my best man. The humiliation has already happened. I'm just going to make sure everyone knows about it." "Nathan," Lucas said desperately, "I know you're angry and you have every right to be. But think about this carefully. Once you say something publicly, you can't take it back. This will affect all of us for the rest of our lives." "You should have thought about that 8 months ago," I replied coldly. I turned and walked back toward the ballroom, hearing their footsteps following reluctantly behind me. My hands were shaking, my heart was racing, but my mind was crystal clear about what I needed to do. The people in that ballroom deserved to know the truth. They had traveled from across the country, spent money on gifts, taken time off work, and dressed in their finest clothes to celebrate what they thought was a marriage built on love and commitment. Instead, they were celebrating the biggest lie I'd ever been forced to live. It was time to tell the truth. When I walked back into the Liberty Hotel's ballroom, dessert was finishing up and people were beginning to mingle more freely. The atmosphere was warm and celebratory. Guests were moving between tables to chat with friends they hadn't seen in years. Children were running around with chocolate cake on their faces, and the photographer was capturing candid moments of joy and laughter. No one noticed that the groom looked like he'd just witnessed his own execution, or that the bride and best man trailing behind him looked like they were walking to their own funerals. The string quartet was just finishing a soft jazz number, and I could see that our wedding coordinator Rachel was preparing to announce the cake-cutting ceremony and first dance. Everything was proceeding exactly according to the timeline we'd spent months planning. Except that the marriage we were celebrating had just died in a service corridor. I walked directly to the small stage area where the quartet was set up. The musicians looked at me expectantly, probably assuming I wanted to make another toast or announcement about the evening's festivities. "Excuse me," I said to the lead violinist, "may I borrow your microphone for a moment?" "Of course, Mr. Walker," she replied with a professional smile, handing over the wireless microphone they used for announcements. I turned to face the ballroom, and gradually conversations died down as people noticed me standing with the microphone. 180 pairs of eyes turned toward me expectantly, probably anticipating another speech or perhaps an announcement about dancing or other wedding traditions. Olivia and Lucas had taken their seats at the head table, both looking like they wanted to disappear into the floor. Olivia's face was pale despite her makeup, and Lucas was staring at his hands, unable to meet anyone's gaze. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the ballroom sound system, "thank you again for being here today to celebrate what we all thought was the beginning of Olivia's and my life together." The phrasing was odd enough that several guests exchanged puzzled looks. My mother, sitting at the family table, tilted her head with a slight frown, sensing that something was off in my tone. "Before we continue with the festivities, I have an important announcement to make," I continued, feeling strangely calm despite the magnitude of what I was about to do. "I've just learned something that changes everything about this celebration." The room was completely silent now. You could have heard a pin drop. Even the children seemed to sense the gravity of the moment and stopped their playing. "You see, about 20 minutes ago, I went to check on my beautiful bride when she was taking what seemed like a very long time in the restroom," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. "What I discovered has fundamentally changed the nature of this gathering." Guests were beginning to lean forward in their seats, confusion and concern evident on their faces. Several people looked toward Olivia and Lucas, noting their obvious distress. "I found my wife of 3 hours and my best man of 15 years in a service corridor, passionately kissing and professing their love for each other," I announced, my words dropping into the silence like stones into still water. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Gasps echoed throughout the room. Several people dropped their champagne glasses. My mother's hand flew to her mouth in shock, and Olivia's father stood up so quickly he knocked over his chair. "That's right," I continued, raising my voice slightly to be heard over the growing murmur of disbelief. "The bride and the best man have been having an affair for the past 8 months. While we were planning this wedding, choosing flowers, sending invitations, and writing vows about eternal love and faithfulness, they were planning something entirely different." The murmur grew louder, a mix of shock, outrage, and confusion rippling through the assembled guests. Some people were taking out their phones, whether to record the moment or call someone with the news. I couldn't tell. Olivia was crying silently, her head buried in her hands. Lucas was staring at the table, his face flushed with shame and embarrassment. "I know what you're all thinking," I continued, looking out at the sea of stunned faces. "This is awkward. This is uncomfortable. You came here to celebrate a marriage, not to witness its destruction. And for that, I sincerely apologize." Father Patrick, who was still in attendance, looked absolutely stricken. Several of Olivia's colleagues from the hospital were whispering urgently among themselves. My business associates were staring in obvious disbelief. "But I want you all to understand exactly what kind of people you've been celebrating today," I said, my voice taking on a harder edge. "Olivia Walker, excuse me, she's only been Olivia Walker for about 3 hours, stood in a church this morning and promised to love, honor, and cherish me. She promised to be faithful in good times and bad. She looked me in the eyes, looked all of you in the eyes, and lied." The tension in the room was electric. Some guests were clearly uncomfortable with the public nature of this revelation, while others seemed riveted by the drama unfolding before them. "And Lucas Reynolds, my best man, the person I trusted most in this world, has been systematically betraying that trust for 8 months, I continued. "He held my wedding rings today. He gave a beautiful speech about friendship and love and commitment. All while planning to steal my wife." Lucas finally looked up, his eyes pleading with me to stop, but I wasn't finished. "They told me they were planning to wait until after our honeymoon to figure out how to tell me about their relationship," I said, putting air quotes around the words. "How thoughtful of them to let me consummate my marriage before revealing that my wife is in love with someone else." The reaction from the crowd was getting louder. I could hear voices expressing outrage, disappointment, and shock. Olivia's aunt called out, "How could you do this to him?" while someone from Lucas's table said, "This is unbelievable." Dr. Richard Harper, Olivia's father, was standing at his table with his face red with anger and humiliation. "Olivia Catherine Harper," he said in a voice that carried across the entire room, "how could you disgrace our family like this?" Catherine Harper was crying into her napkin while Olivia's sister Emma looked like she was in complete shock. Lucas suddenly stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Nathan, stop this," he said, his voice carrying without a microphone. "You're right, okay? We messed up. We betrayed you in the worst possible way. But destroying us in front of everyone isn't going to fix anything." The room buzzed with new energy as people turned to look at Lucas, then back at me like they were watching a tennis match. "Fix anything?" I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "Lucas, you and my wife destroyed my life. You made a fool of me in front of everyone I care about. You turned my wedding day into the culmination of your deception. Why shouldn't I return the favor?" "Because we used to be brothers," Lucas said desperately. "Because despite everything, you know I never wanted to hurt you." "Never wanted to hurt me?" I stared at him in disbelief. "Lucas, you've been sleeping with my fiancée for 8 months. You stood beside me as my best man while planning to steal my wife. What part of that wasn't designed to hurt me?" Olivia finally spoke up, her voice barely audible even in the silent room. "Nathan, please. I know we deserve your anger, but please don't do this to our families. Think about your parents, my parents. They don't deserve this public humiliation." I looked out at my mother, who was crying silently, and my father, who looked like he wanted to physically attack Lucas. I saw Olivia's parents, dealing with the shame of their daughter's public betrayal. I saw Lucas's parents trying to process what their son had done. "You're right, Olivia," I said into the microphone. "Our families don't deserve this. They came here in good faith to celebrate what they thought was a real marriage. They spent money, took time off work, and traveled long distances to support us. They deserve better than what you've given them." I looked out at the 180 faces staring back at me, some sympathetic, some shocked, some angry, some uncomfortable. These were the people who mattered most in our lives, and they had all been deceived. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice becoming more formal, "I want to thank you all for being here today, even though this celebration has taken an unexpected turn. You've shown tremendous support for what you thought was the beginning of a lifelong partnership, and I'm grateful for your love and friendship." I paused, looking around the room one more time. "However, given what I've just learned about my wife and best man, I think it's best if we end this celebration now. The bar will remain open for another hour if anyone would like to stay and decompress from this situation. But as for me, I have some serious thinking to do about my future. I set the microphone down and started walking toward the exit, but before I could leave, several people intercepted me. My Uncle Patrick was the first to reach me. "Nathan," he said firmly, putting his weathered hands on my shoulders, "you handled this with more dignity than they deserved. You have nothing to be ashamed of." My college roommate Ryan was right behind him. "Man, I can't believe they did this to you. Lucas seemed like such a good guy." "That's what I thought too," I replied, surprised by how emotionally drained I suddenly felt. Olivia's colleague from the hospital, a nurse named Claire who had worked with her for years, approached with tears in her eyes. "Nathan, I'm so sorry. We all thought Olivia was crazy about you. I never would have suspected she was capable of something like this." "Thank you," I said simply, not sure what else to say. My business partner Alex, who had flown in from New York for the wedding, clapped me on the back. "You did the right thing, man. Better to find out now than 5 years from now with kids involved." As I made my way toward the exit, I could hear the chaos erupting behind me. Raised voices, crying, the sound of chairs scraping as people got up to leave or to confront Olivia and Lucas directly. I caught sight of Lucas's father William confronting his son at the head table, his voice low but obviously furious. Olivia's mother Catherine was in hysterics, while her father Richard was speaking in urgent, angry whispers to his daughter. But I couldn't handle any more of it. I needed to get out of that ballroom, away from the ruins of what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and figure out how to begin rebuilding my world from scratch. My parents caught up with me in the hotel lobby. "Sweetheart," my mother said, embracing me tightly, "I'm so sorry. I'm so proud of how you handled that, but I'm so sorry you had to go through it." "Thanks, Mom," I said, holding her close. "I just need to go home and think." "You don't have to think alone," my father said firmly. "We're here for you whatever you need." "I know, Dad. But right now, I just need some time to process all of this." They understood as they always did. After extracting promises that I would call if I needed anything, they let me go home to begin the long process of figuring out what came next. As I drove away from the Liberty Hotel, I could see guests streaming out of the hotel, some in animated conversation, others walking in stunned silence. The story would spread quickly through Boston's social and business circles. By tomorrow, everyone would know about the wedding day betrayal that had destroyed 3 lives in the span of an afternoon. But in that moment, driving through the streets of Boston in my wedding tuxedo, I felt something unexpected alongside the pain and betrayal. I felt free. 4 months, I'd been carrying the weight of subtle doubts and nagging worries about Olivia and Lucas's behavior. I'd been second-guessing my instincts, dismissing my concerns, and trying to convince myself that everything was fine when deep down I knew it wasn't. Now I knew the truth. It was devastating, but it was real. And reality, no matter how painful, is always better than living a lie. The hardest part was over. Now I could begin the process of rebuilding my life on a foundation of truth instead of deception. The immediate aftermath of my wedding day revelation was swift, brutal, and oddly satisfying. Within hours, the story had spread throughout Boston's interconnected social and business networks. By Monday morning, it was the talk of every coffee shop, gym, and office building in the city. The local news even picked up the story, running a segment about wedding day betrayal shocks Boston business community, that featured interviews with several shocked guests. Olivia and Lucas tried to leave the hotel together immediately after my announcement, but they were intercepted by both sets of parents and several family members who demanded explanations. According to witnesses, the confrontation in the hotel lobby was even more dramatic than my public revelation had been. Dr. Richard Harper, Olivia's father known for his professional demeanor, reportedly shouted at Lucas in front of a dozen people, calling him a snake and a homewrecker, who had destroyed a good man's life for selfish gratification. Lucas's own father William was equally furious, telling his son that he was ashamed to share a name with him and that his actions had dishonored everything the Reynolds family stood for. The professional consequences began almost immediately. Olivia took an indefinite leave of absence from Boston Children's Hospital, claiming she needed time to deal with personal matters. However, according to her former colleagues, the real reason was that she couldn't handle the whispers and stares from co-workers who had attended our wedding. The nursing staff, who had known me through Olivia for over 2 years, were universally disgusted by her betrayal. Within a month, she had quietly transferred to a different hospital in Providence, 70 miles away. Lucas's career at his father's investment firm suffered even more immediate damage. Several major clients pulled their accounts within days of the wedding incident, stating that they couldn't trust someone with such questionable character. His father, left with little choice, asked Lucas to resign his position. The Boston financial community, which operates on relationships and trust, essentially blacklisted him. By September, just 5 months after our wedding, Lucas had moved to Chicago to start fresh. The Reynolds family investment firm, built over 30 years, lost several major accounts due to Lucas's actions in a single afternoon. Olivia and Lucas tried to make their relationship work, but it collapsed spectacularly within 8 months. Apparently, a relationship built on lies, betrayal, and mutual guilt isn't sustainable in the harsh light of reality. Who could have predicted that? According to mutual friends, they broke up when Olivia discovered that Lucas was already seeing someone else, a real estate agent in Chicago who had helped him find an apartment. The irony was not lost on anyone who knew the story. Olivia had been betrayed by the same man who had helped her betray me. Lucas's new girlfriend, according to gossip that filtered back to Boston, broke up with him within weeks of learning about his history. Apparently, once you're known as someone who will betray his best friend on his wedding day, it becomes difficult to convince new partners that you're trustworthy. Olivia eventually moved back to Boston but kept a low profile. She rented a small apartment in a different neighborhood, took a job at a clinic rather than a major hospital, and essentially disappeared from the social circles we had shared. On the rare occasions when mutual acquaintances encountered her, they reported that she seemed deeply depressed and isolated. As for me, the first few months were undeniably difficult. The practical aspects of unwinding a marriage that had lasted only 3 hours were complicated and expensive. There were vendor payments to sort out, gifts to return, legal documents to file, and a honeymoon to cancel. The emotional recovery was harder. I had to grieve not just the loss of my marriage, but the loss of my best friend and the complete reconstruction of my understanding of the past 2 years. Every memory I had of Olivia and Lucas together now needed to be reinterpreted through the lens of their secret relationship. I went through the classic stages of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance. There were nights when I couldn't sleep, wondering how I had missed so many signs. There were days when I was furious at myself for being so trusting and naive. There were moments when I actually considered whether I could somehow forgive them and find a way to make the relationship work. But mostly once the initial shock wore off, I felt relief. I realized that I had been carrying the weight of subconscious doubt for months. My instincts had been telling me that something was wrong, but I had dismissed those feelings as pre-wedding nerves or imagination. Learning the truth, as painful as it was, allowed me to trust my own judgment again. More importantly, I was free from a life built on lies. If Olivia and Lucas hadn't been caught that day, I would have spent months or years as an unknowing fool, married to a woman who was in love with someone else. That would have been infinitely worse than the public humiliation I experienced. The response from the community was overwhelmingly supportive, which surprised me. I had expected people to be uncomfortable with how publicly I had handled the situation, but the opposite proved to be true. Most people admired the fact that I had confronted the betrayal directly rather than trying to cover it up or handle it privately. My gym business actually benefited from the publicity. Membership inquiries increased as people wanted to support someone who had handled adversity with dignity. Several new corporate clients signed up specifically because they respected how I had dealt with the crisis. Within 6 months, Pinnacle Fitness had grown from 12 to 16 locations across Massachusetts. More importantly, I gained a new understanding of what real friendship and loyalty looked like. The people who supported me through the crisis, my family, true friends, loyal employees, and even some strangers who were moved by the story, showed me what authentic relationships actually meant. I also learned valuable lessons about trust and intuition. I promised myself that I would never again dismiss my instincts about people or situations. If something feels wrong, there's usually a good reason for that feeling. About 18 months after the wedding disaster, I began dating again. I was cautious at first, probably overly so, but gradually I learned to open my heart again while maintaining healthy boundaries and clear communication about expectations. I met Sophia Lynn at a business networking event in Cambridge. She was an architect who had started her own sustainable design firm, specializing in environmentally friendly buildings. She was intelligent, independent, funny, and refreshingly straightforward about her intentions and expectations. When I told Sophia the story of my wedding day betrayal, her response changed my perspective forever. "Nathan," she said after I had finished recounting the entire saga, "that's the most valuable gift anyone has ever given you." Gift? I stared at her in confusion. How is being betrayed and humiliated a gift? Because they showed you exactly who they were before you wasted decades of your life with them, she replied matter-of-factly. Imagine if you had found out about their relationship 5 years from now, when you had kids and a mortgage and shared assets. Imagine if Olivia had waited until you were 45 to decide she wanted to be with Lucas. The betrayal would have been the same, but the damage would have been exponentially worse. She was absolutely right. Olivia and Lucas had actually done me a massive favor by being caught when they were. Their betrayal, as painful as it was, had freed me to build a life with someone who actually deserved my trust and love. Sophia and I dated for 2 years before getting engaged, and our relationship was everything my relationship with Olivia hadn't been: honest, straightforward, built on mutual respect and shared values. When Sophia said she loved me, I believed her completely because she had demonstrated her trustworthiness in countless small ways over time. We were married in a small, intimate ceremony in Nantucket with only immediate family present. No best man, no maid of honor, no elaborate reception. Just two people making honest promises to each other in front of the people who mattered most. Today, 5 years after the wedding day that destroyed my first marriage, I have a life that exceeds my wildest dreams from that April afternoon in 2021. Pinnacle Fitness now has 22 locations across Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire. I employ over 300 people and have been featured in Entrepreneur magazine as one of the top fitness industry innovators under 40. The business success has allowed me to establish a foundation in my sister Maggie's memory that provides college scholarships to underprivileged students. Sophia and I have a beautiful home in Brookline with views of the Boston skyline and enough space for the 2 children we're planning to have. She's become a true partner in every sense of the word, supporting my business ambitions while pursuing her own, challenging me intellectually and making me laugh every single day. Most importantly, I have relationships built on genuine trust and mutual respect. I know exactly where I stand with the people in my life because I've learned to value honesty above politeness, authenticity above convenience, and character above charm. I occasionally hear updates about Olivia and Lucas through mutual acquaintances, though I rarely ask and never seek out information about them. Olivia apparently married a doctor in Providence, someone she met at the hospital where she works. According to reports, it was a very small, private ceremony with only immediate family present. I hope she has found happiness and learned from her mistakes, though I have no desire to verify this personally. Lucas bounced around the Midwest for a few years before eventually settling in Denver, where he works for someone else's investment firm rather than running his own. He never married, though he's had several long-term relationships that reportedly ended when his partners learned about his history. The story of his wedding day betrayal apparently follows him wherever he goes, a permanent reminder of the consequences of betraying trust. People sometimes ask me if I've ever regretted exposing them so publicly, or if I would handle the situation differently if I could do it again. The answer is absolutely not. Olivia and Lucas made the choice to conduct their affair behind my back for 8 months. They made the choice to turn my wedding day into the culmination of their deception. They made the choice to lie to my face, our family's faces, and God's face when they stood up in that church. All I did was tell the truth about what they had chosen to do. The truth, as painful as it was in that moment, set me free to build the life I actually deserved. Their betrayal, as devastating as it felt at the time, was actually the catalyst for every good thing that has happened to me since. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that ever happened to you. You just have to be patient enough to see it through to the other side. The sweetest revenge isn't destroying the people who hurt you. It's building a life so good that their betrayal becomes completely irrelevant to your happiness. That's exactly what I did. And now I'm curious about you. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever experienced a betrayal like this? How did you handle it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to tell me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Thanks for sticking with me through this whole incredible journey. Life throws curveballs at all of us, but we're all stronger and more resilient than we think we are. Remember, the truth might hurt in the moment, but lies hurt forever. Choose truth, choose authenticity, and choose people who choose you back. Until next time, keep your standards high and your trust earned.